week has passed by quickly, or this month. And we've been looking for the months since, or the Sundays since Easter, at the Lord's Prayer. And here we are at the end of April already. Now, this week I was still trying to get situated. As many of you know, I've moved to a new place, much closer to the church, and I really appreciate that. But it's kind of fun to wander around your own apartment looking for things. As friends helped me get organized, I didn't always know where everything was. So I discovered my TV remote yesterday, packed away in a box. That was helpful. But I was making a salad last night, and I was preparing a beautiful red onion. And I kept peeling away the layers until I got to that shiny heart of the onion that I was looking for, that I was seeking. And I just kept peeling away, and I thought, oh, yes, it is truly an image of what we've been doing this month with the Lord's Prayer. Not that I have tried to suggest to you that there was any particular way to experience this patterned prayer, but I did want us to have the opportunity this month to live into the Aramaic language, to just hear the sound and imagine what it was when Jesus' disciples, or those that were close followers, actually heard his voice, the Christ speaking through Jesus of Nazareth. And they ask him, Lord, teach us to pray. Teach us to pray. How do we do it? I suspect many of us are still asking that question to this day. It's actually one of the most common questions or concerns that I've found in my 30 years in Unity ministry, is when people feel really safe with me in a class or a small setting, they'll say, I'm not sure I know how to do it. I'm not sure I'm doing it the right way. I'm not sure I'm saying the right things to God. So, relax. Many people have this feeling. And so as the disciples asked Jesus, teach us, Jesus revealed what we now call the Our Father, Pater Noster, the Lord's Prayer. And we've looked at it this month, one in the Aramaic language, the sound, the root meanings of the words. I don't know, maybe it's just my emotional nature, but just to hear the Aramaic language, I'm used to Our Father, but to hear that Abund in the heavens, de Boishmaya, somehow it allows my heart and my imagination to move into those sounds. Last week, we approached it differently, another layer of the onion to explore. Now, sometimes working with that onion gets a little bit messy and odoriferous. Is that the right word? It can be strong. And sometimes when we look at something that is so sacred in our spiritual, in our Christian tradition, it's sort of like, don't monkey with my words, or don't monkey with the way that I do the Lord's Prayer. But it is very important that we take the opportunity to work in our prayer life, whether it is with the pattern of the Lord's Prayer, or as we looked last week at the oldest prayer I know of, the Great Invocation of Charles Fillmore, at the very beginning of our Unity work, about 1892, I believe, was when it appeared. And it was another way to invite the seeker, what was becoming to be called the Unity student, to work with a prayer that had excited them inwardly, that allowed them to connect with their source of being. Today, we're going to take another little onion skin, another little layer. And this one comes from the inspiration of Dr. Rudolf Steiner, a European contemporary, same time period as Charles Fillmore. The Unity movement was calling itself spiritual science in its early days in America, and Dr. Steiner was leading an organization calling itself spiritual science in Europe, based in Switzerland. Except they had the wonderful German name for spiritual science, Geisteswissenschaft. I love that. Many of you know that I had the opportunity to spend a year in studying in their world headquarters in Switzerland. And it took me a long time just to learn how to say the name of the school, which was the University for Spiritual Science, the Freie Hochschule für Geisteswissenschaft. It made you feel really important to be able to come out with that word, although sometimes the German speakers looked at me trying to figure out, what is he trying to say? Dr. Steiner described the Lord's Prayer as the most ideal prayer form that contained the entire prescription for and description of the human being. I'll say that again. The ideal prescription for and description of the human being. Now you might be saying, I thought this prayer was to direct our focus to our Father who art in heaven. But as Rudolf Steiner described the petitions or the statements of the Lord's Prayer, which we're used to speaking, of course, in our English language, those petitions, he said, were describing different aspects of the human being as created by its God. That it was both describing the divine and the child of God, the expression of God, each individual. In the opening of the prayer, Dr. Steiner suggests that we experience the breathing or the rhythm of our consciousness in the experience of the prayer. Now, if you were here 2 weeks ago, we experienced that in the Aramaic language. Dr. Steiner says we can find it in these statements. Our Father, who art in heaven. To really experience that is to allow our consciousness to go far beyond our individual life, into the heavenly realms, the universal realm, the allness, the unity of life. And then in the second line, we take that back in. Hallowed be thy name. But Dr. Steiner said something very curious. And many have cited this over the 20 centuries. Jesus offered this master prayer. He said, pray in this manner. And some have said, where is the name of Christ in this most central prayer of Christianity? Last week I suggested in the Unity Great Invocation that there seemed to be something missing. But it wasn't really missing, it was something that we had to seek between the lines. So Dr. Steiner suggested a way that this can be understood is as we begin this prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, as we gather or breathe back in, gather our consciousness back in, hallowed be thy name, might be heard, Christ within is thy holy name. An understanding of God, the Father, Mother, the source of all being, the ground of all being, and then, as if one were breathing in, to take that within and realize that divine presence is within you and in our tradition of unity, of Dr. Steiner's work, of many other traditions, that is understood as the indwelling Christ. Our Father who art in heaven, the Christ within be thy holy name. Again, there is an outbreathing. Thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom come. A realization that God's spiritual kingdom is among us, as Jesus taught. To realize the spiritual realm is not off somewhere, let's say beyond Jupiter, maybe between Jupiter and Pluto, or it's here. It is that withinness or essence that stands behind all creation. Physical creation, the creation of the plant world, the animal world, the human world. And then that next line, thy kingdom come, to realize the realm of God is among us. Then we gather or breathe back in. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Realizing, as we teach in unity, that we are co-creators. That this line is reminding, it is a prescription for us. That doing the divine will is our most ideal intention. It is humanity's greatest goal or mission in this life. That spirit may be fully creatively expressed in outer creation, within us. In unity we say that the goal of the individual is spiritual awakening or spiritual unfoldment. That we come into the truest expression of our being. Now I think it's very interesting that in this prayer, and back many centuries to the early leaders of the church, it was understood that these first three statements that I've just given, these first three statements seem to be directed to the divine, to the heavenly, to our Father. And now the next four petitions or statements of the prayer are directed to, let's say, life on earth, the human experience of life. And we have it in the statement of, give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. Leave us not, or abandon us not, in temptation. And then 4, but deliver us from evil. These 4 statements may be called in the old Latin word the quadrivium, and the first 3 are the trivium, terms used in the Middle Ages. And it's very interesting if you like wordplay. We have come down in a time that believes very much in the scientific and the material. And have you ever heard someone use that word trivial? As in the game Trivial Pursuit? Well, what's it mean? Something that's not very important. It's just trivial. Over time, that was derived from the trivium, which meant our spiritual truth. Isn't that a strange play on words? Another one like it was when something was filled with glory and wonder. It was awful. And look what the word awful has come to be in our time. So that's like some of those little layers of the onion. It may sometimes be bitter or stink a little, have too much odor, and we have to re-examine. These 4 statements we can't go into detail today, but I invite you to consider our upcoming class that I will do beginning May 17th on the experience of prayer, and we will continue working with the Lord's Prayer and also with the activity of prayer through time and through a number of cultures, the creative process of the human being in prayer. These last 4 statements, in summary, I said in the beginning, Dr. Steiner described that Jesus was giving a prescription in this prayer, that individuals may know how to connect with their source. And a prescription also, what does it do? Well, hopefully, it helps one heal, ideally. But it's something that a healer gives, that balance may be found, healing may be found in our life. So it acknowledges that God is the source of the daily bread. So the human being is sustained physically in the physical body. It gives the statement, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This begins to talk to the soul nature, the heart nature of the human being, and how it relates to others. In other words, our social connection. To be well, we must be free of the burden of obligation between people, continually setting one another free through forgiveness and release. This is important to the health of our life. The next line, leave us not in temptation, speaks more to the individual nature of the human being. Leave us not in a place of sin or error, but through your wisdom, guide us, free us. And finally, that last statement, but deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil. Well, we could go on all day or perhaps another month in a contemplation of evil. This seems like a very insignificant wordplay, but for me, it really helps me understand my evil ways. To look at the word evil, we realize it is what? The word live backwards. Evil is live spelled backwards. So that gives us this idea, this conception of evil is living in the wrong way, in an inappropriate way, the life that we are given as children of God. It's to misuse our divine power. And Dr. Steiner says we are challenged as human beings every day and all the time by evil. And it may not always, in your experience, be the evil that you see in the media or the evil that brings death of a human being by the act of another. That evil or that living backwards can simply be misusing our power, our creative will, misusing it in a way that is not fair to others, disregards others. In other words, it becomes harmful or destructive rather than upbuilding. It doesn't appreciate life, it depreciates life. So for our time, our contemplation or meditation this morning, I invite you to just become comfortable as I speak the Lord's Prayer through a paraphrase written by Dr. Rudolf Steiner called the Esoteric Lord's Prayer. And there is one of those fancy words we don't use all the time in our language, but exoteric means the outer form or the obvious meaning of something, whereas esoteric is like what we say in unity, the within, the withinness. It means the inner, the secret, the essential, or hold on a minute, a word that Dr. Steiner and even Charles Fillmore used to use that has really flipped over through time and its meaning, and that word is occult. Occult. Oh, that's just what I need to get around the community. Reverend Stacy is offering occult teachings at Unity Church. Occult means hidden, means secret, not in the sense that I'm withholding it from Nikki, but it's the inner. It's the meaning that you have to strive for. It's that esoteric inner experience of the Lord's Prayer, which I hope this month, through what I've spoken about, perhaps there's a tidbit or a layer of that onion that you're experiencing differently or you had never considered before. So I invite you, hear this paraphrase of the Lord's Prayer, and if you seek, you'll find your special, esoteric meaning in it. So just be comfortable, allow your eyes to close if you choose. Father, you who were, are, and will be in the inmost being of all of us. May your name be glorified in us and praised. May your kingdom grow more expansive in our deeds and in the conduct of our lives. May we enact your will in our life as you, Father, have enshrined it in our inmost heart and soul. In overflowing abundance, you give us spiritual nourishment, the bread of life, through all changing conditions of our lives. Let our mercy towards others atone for the sins perpetrated upon our being. You do not allow the tempter to work in us beyond the capacity of our strength, for no temptation can prevail in your being, and the tempter is only appearance and illusion, from which you will safely deliver us, Father, through the light of your knowledge. May your power and glory work in us through all cycles of time. Good Shepherd, ever-present Christ, we give thanks for your perpetual guidance, that in every day, in every way you endeavor to lead us forward as we are willing to fully, honestly, and willingly walk the path that is our own individual life. For the blessings of discovery upon the way, we say thanks be to God. And praise to the holy name and nature that is Christ with us. And so we say, Amen and Hallelujah.